Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. So, this Kenny Pickett thing has gotten a little bit strange as of lately, right? Now, again, we're in May. We're talking about OTAs, right? But the reports from people at OTAs, and I want to caution this with the understanding that the Browns are notoriously secretive, right? So any information you get about what the Browns are doing that's been volunteered by the Cleveland Browns, you have to look at with a healthily skeptical lens, because that information is probably out for a reason. And it's probably to benefit the Browns, right? And I point no further to the most recent example, and an example I've had to learn from, which is how open Andrew Berry was about his love for Travis Hunter. Hindsight being 2020, his open profession of love for Travis Hunter felt more like trying to grease the Jacksonville Jaguars into upping the ante when it comes to trading for Travis Hunter. And if that's what the Browns were trying to do, right? If the Browns were trying to convince everybody that they would take Travis Hunter to make the Jacksonville Jaguars feel like they had to offer a Godfather deal to get the pick, and that wasn't their intention all along, and they fooled the Jaguars into that. If it works out for them, it's going to be one of the more masterful GM gambits that we ever talk about, right? Now, we got to see if that trade ultimately ends up working out for them, but that's a big example, right? There was a lot out there telling you how much the Browns love Travis Hunter, so much so that I was even convinced, right, that the Browns were going to take Travis Hunter. And then you get to the draft and they trade the pick, right? Right before the draft, you find out that they're going to trade the pick. So whenever you hear information about the Cleveland Browns, and whenever you hear like the Browns giving you intimate details or giving reporters intimate details about stuff, you always have to question, why is that information out there? What could be some of the ulterior motives behind this, right? And I think the first one that pops up to a lot of people is the same thing that happened in the draft. Oh, are the Browns trying to, try to drum up a little bit of a market for Kenny Pickett, because after the draft, Kenny Pickett has become a little bit expendable. Now, I do find the case of Kenny Pickett to be interesting, because it kind of ties in to what's going to be a larger debate for the Cleveland Browns when it comes to what the coaching staff's going to want and what the front office is going to want, right? And usually Kevin and Andrew Berry are in lockstep about most things that they do. But when it comes to roster decisions, there's always going to be natural tension there between Kevin and Andrew Berry, tension that every front office has, by the way, but tension nonetheless. And that tension is Kevin's job is to want to get the most out of this group as possible, wins-loss wise. Andrew Berry's job is to figure out the most about this group. And sometimes those two things align. Sometimes those two things bump heads. And when you look at the Browns quarterback room, I think this is a perfect opportunity for those two reasons of being to cause a lot of friction, and I'm not saying they're going to be drama-filled or anything, but to cause a very interesting conversation to be had once the Browns get closer and closer to cutting down to 53. Because I'm sure if you gave Kevin Stefanski truth serum, his goal for 2025 is he doesn't want to have to switch out quarterbacks, right? I bet if you're asking Kevin wants Kenny Pickett to emerge as a starter, to be good enough to start so he can just start one quarterback and have that consistency to build off on the offense for this year. I don't think Kevin wants to play a bunch of different guys. I don't think Kevin's eager to play any rookie, right? He does not seem like the type that loves rookies, if I'm being honest with you, right? Like Kevin seems like the type that likes to lean on veteran players, especially at the quarterback position. And Kevin's going to want a guy at the quarterback position who has played before, who they really think has a chance to start the whole year. That's what Kevin's going to want, right? Right now, the reports are that Kenny Pickett and Dillon Gabriel are splitting the first team reps, and Joe Flacco and Shedeur Sanders are splitting the second team reps. Now, Joe Flacco is going to be on the low end of, I would not take much about how the Browns feel about Joe Flacco based on what reps he's taking with who. Joe Flacco's just not going to take that many reps. He's old. He knows the offense. There's really no reason for him to take a ton of reps in training camp. Even if he was the no doubt starter, he would probably be taking small reps with small units, and it really wouldn't be that big of a deal, right? Shedeur taking second team reps, that makes sense. Ultimately a 5th round pick, right? Kenny Pickett taking first team reps, that makes sense. Dillon Gabriel, you're going to give the guy you drafted in the 3rd round the first crack at the first team reps. That makes sense, right? But the question here, when I talk about this friction that's going to exist between Kevin and Andrew when it comes to cut down, is Andrew has all the incentive in the world to want to see all of these quarterbacks play. Kevin is not going to be excited about that idea. No football coach would, right? No football coach is like, oh man, I can't wait to start 4 quarterbacks, especially an offensive-minded coach. But if you're Andrew, you're looking at this and like, hey, I want to get a look at Dillon. I want to get a look at Shedeur. You know, we'll see if Kenny Pickett is good enough to warrant a look. But maybe you want to get a look at Kenny Pickett too, right? Like the goals on how to shape this quarterback room could be very different between these two. And we could see that kind of play itself out, and it could be a little bit of a battle here. So that's an interesting dynamic that goes into this Kenny Pickett thing, because I think a lot of what we're hearing about Kenny Pickett potentially being the starter, a lot of what Kenny Pickett is doing, where Kenny Pickett has been acting like the starting quarterback of the team for like the last month and a half, right? He's the first guy calling these draft picks and welcoming them to the team. Like he's been doing starting quarterback stuff. And I think that's because Kenny Pickett sensed that Kevin wants this dude to start, right? He wants a guy who has NFL experience to start the whole year for the Cleveland Browns. And that might be the energy that he's picking up. And that part might be true. But that doesn't mean that Kevin's going to win that battle when it comes to the quarterback position, that they might ultimately decide, hey, Kev, we gotta prioritize giving these guys looks over whatever you think might be able to duct tape through a 17-game season this year. If you don't think you're going to make the playoffs with Kenny Pickett, then it really don't matter if you play a whole season with Kenny Pickett. You feel me? Like that might be the ultimate kind of question that they have to ask themselves. But Kenny being a piece of trade bait, there's only one problem I find with that theory. Obviously, I find it to be something that could definitely happen. The only problem I have with the Kenny Pickett being trade bait theory is this. Do we really think the Browns are going to be able to finesse somebody into trading a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick for Kenny Pickett when we just got done trading a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick for Kenny Pickett? Things like this have happened. We did trade Josh Dobbs for a 5th round pick. But I don't think that's stuff that you can count on, right? And if the Browns are playing a long con here where they're trying to set up Kenny Pickett as the starter, that means they're counting on somebody to bite and trade for him. And I just don't think that's a great way to operate. And I can't assume that's how the Browns are operating here, right? Like that's my one holdup with this whole theory that the Browns are pumping up Kenny Pickett to look like a starter so they can trade him and get a gambit for him, right? I think what's happening here is in some ways more simple than that. Kevin wants a dude like Kenny Pickett to be the starter. And the front office, might feel differently about that come time to start the season. Who knows? Maybe Dillon and Shedeur show you nothing during training camp and during the preseason, and you definitely bring in Kenny Pickett. But if you see anything from these rookie quarterbacks, I want to ask y'all this question, right? But if you see anything from the rookie quarterbacks this year, if the rookie quarterbacks give you any amount of joy in the preseason or in training camp, any reason to hope, then you tell me what quarterback room makes more sense. Kenny Pickett, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders, or Joe Flacco, Dylan Gabriel, Shedeur Sanders. We're already seeing why I think Joe Flacco would be the superior person to have on this team if you were just to keep one veteran. And that's because Joe Flacco has actual clout, right? As a veteran quarterback. Like if Joe Flacco says something, the guys in that room are more inclined to listen. This is a guy who's had a very long career in the NFL. He's won a Super Bowl as a starting quarterback in the NFL, has had one of the hottest playoff runs, right? Is known for playing high quality football and has what both these guys want. You know, Dylan Gabriel's a 3rd round pick. Shedeur Sanders is 5th round pick. If their careers line up anything like Joe Flacco's, that's a tremendous win for them, right? And I think there is value to having him as a veteran. I also think the other value of Joe Flacco is there is absolutely no expectation that he's going to play 17 games. So if you start Joe Flacco, inherently, you know that you will eventually play Dylan Gabriel in the season and you will eventually play Shedeur Sanders in the season, and you'll get a look at these guys enough to know how desperate you need to be in the draft for a quarterback, right? One of these guys emerging, I don't think guarantees you from stopping of drafting a quarterback. I think there's a high chance the Browns take a quarterback in 2026, even if they feel decent about the quarterback position. Like let's say Dylan or Shedeur plays well, I think there's still a chance they still take a quarterback, right? Kenny Pickett, on the other hand, being in this room, I just don't see what it offers you that benefits you. Now, again, if the rookies don't show you anything and Kevin's going into the season and he's saying, I don't want to play any of these guys anytime soon, then yeah, keep Kenny Pickett. Makes a ton of sense. You might even want to start Kenny Pickett. That makes a ton of sense too, right? But if you get anything from these rookie quarterbacks, then yeah, you're going to want to play Kenny Pickett. So I think this is a very fluid situation. I don't think it matters who the front runner is in this quarterback competition. I don't think it matters who gets pole position versus the worst starting spot. I don't know what they call that in races, but you know, I don't think it really matters because this is a very open race and the Browns don't have any commitments to start any of these guys, right? Like if Deshaun Watson were a part of this, I'd be more worried about it being a farce, but this is a truly open competition. Any one of these guys could outright win the job and be the starting quarterback. And you can see there being reasons for, you know, different Browns personnel to want different guys to be successful. There's a number of ways to look at it. But I think if you're the Browns, eventually when it comes to cutting down to that 53-man roster for week 1, you're going to prioritize contract value at the quarterback position, which means you're not going to cut your 2 rookies. And if you're not going to cut one of your 2 rookie quarterbacks, then it makes more sense to keep Joe Flacco. So I don't know where Kenny Pickett fits into this. I think Kevin right now is planning on Kenny Pickett potentially being the starter because him being the coach of this team, he's not going to leave a lot of room to be surprised by one of these guys, right? He has to plan for what we know right now. And what we know right now, Kenny Pickett might be your best option to start. I don't feel great saying that, but that's just the truth, right? So it doesn't surprise me that that's what they're starting with, but it wouldn't surprise me if we got to the third preseason game and the outlook of the quarterback room looks completely different by the time we get there, because this quarterback competition is really open to change. But that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Y'all have a great day. Have an even better night. Peace.